Thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. It's a 30-minute money-related webinar, and my name is Renee Brady, and I'm an Employee Comms Manager at Salary Finance and Neighbour. So Salary Finance is a financial benefit made available to you through your employer. We offer access to financial education, affordable loans, advances on earned pay, and simple savings account. And our mission is to help millions of people around the world become financially happier and healthier. So first things first, I need to point out that this session is not personal financial advice. And if you are in any doubt about your own financial situation, you should consult a Citizens Advice Bureau or a regulated financial advisor. Then onto a couple of housekeeping points. We will be, as always, running a few polls. So we really do appreciate if you can participate in these when they pop up on your screen. Do appreciate that. And as always, we welcome your money-related questions. We've left a big chunk of time towards the end of the session to make sure we get to them all. So please don't be shy and pop them in the question box. Right, that's it from me. I'm very pleased to hand over to my colleague, Jason Butler, who is Neighbour and Salary Finance's Head of Financial Education. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Renee. What a great warm-up, girl. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. So very fast-paced session. Again, get your questions in. We'll try and answer as many as we can. There are no silly questions. Now, thinking today about money and making wise decisions about working, spending, borrowing, saving, and investing can be complex, confusing, and overwhelming. And it's very, very easy to think that everyone else has money all figured out and that you're the odd one out. And not knowing how to make the best of your finances or having made past mistakes can leave you feeling shameful, guilty, and really a load of stress. And they are very, very powerful and debilitating emotions. But here is the truth, right? The truth is that few of us are taught how to manage money when we're growing up, despite it being integral to modern life. I mean, if someone said, oh, you hadn't learned, someone hadn't taught you to swim, you'd have thought that as being negligent, right? How many of us ever get in the water, in the sea? But the point here is that we need to know about money, but we're not taught it. And here's the other thing, is this is just a fact that humans are not wired to be naturally good with money. They're just not, because we basically, for this final point here, is that our brains haven't evolved to deal with the modern world of marketing, social media, and consumerism. So here's the point. If you aren't where you want to be with your money, or if there's too much month left at the end of the money, or if you feel embarrassed, annoyed, or frustrated about your financial situation, then today's webinar has something for you. Right, now let's start with our first poll. I want to see if you are, how you're feeling and thinking. I want to know, how easy do you find talking about money? Is it easy? I love talking about my personal finances. Is it okay, but still room for improvement? Not that easy, I feel a bit uncomfortable. Or not that easy, I try to avoid talking about money completely. So you may be the person who goes under the covers as opposed to feeling like you've got it covered. So Renee, if you can launch the poll, please.
Yep.
Easy talking about money. Easy, I love talking about my finances. Okay, but still room for improvement. Not that easy, I feel a bit uncomfortable. Not easy, I try to avoid talking about money. So vote away, don't be shy. Put your answer in. Let's see how you compare to the session we had this morning, because we like to compare the different groups of people who attend these webinars, and we've got another one of these sessions again tomorrow at 12 if you've got any colleagues who want to attend that. So what's it looking like, Renee?
Yeah, perfect. So I'm just going to close the poll and share the results. So 44% of people say okay, but still have room for improvement. 33% not that easy, I feel a bit uncomfortable. 11% not that easy, I try to avoid talking about money. And 11% say easy, I love talking about my personal finances.
Well, that is very similar to this morning, isn't it? Very similar. Yeah. So here's the thing. I mean, whatever you're feeling, whatever your thoughts are, that's fine. The reality is most people aren't where they want to be when it comes to communicating and talking about money. Now, interestingly, in 2015, the University College London did a survey of 15,000 people, which was a cross-representative sample of the UK population. And they found that the average person was 7 times more likely to be happier to tell a complete stranger about their sex life than tell them how much they earned. Now that is a very, very telling fact. And one of the reasons why we find it hard to talk about money is because our financial situation can actually seem like a reflection of who we are, right? Now, it's really easy to think that how much we earn, we spend, we've saved, or we've borrowed reflects how successful we are, or how lazy or hardworking we are, smart or stupid, attractive or unattractive, that you feel or appear to other people. And in a world awash with social media, advertising, materialism, choice, and peer pressure, these can cause that voice in your head to lead you to make poor financial decisions, or even not make decisions that you need to make, and that sabotages your financial well-being. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone has bad voices and negative thoughts and can't control their finances. I'm just saying that all of these other things affect and very much link to our sense of identity and who we are. Now, the first thing that we've got to do is separate what I would call the net worth. Let's just call that term, you know, how much we have financially, with our self-worth. Whatever your financial position, you need to accept and love yourself first and foremost as a human being. Now, I know that sounds a bit woo-woo. It sounds a bit sort of tree-hugging, a bit sort of touchy-feely, right? I'm a very practical person, but I know this to be a fact, that if you are feeling cool about yourself and comfortable in your own skin, and you're feeling secure as an individual and connected with other people, then that's your starting point, right? And we're going to come on to what you need to do with that. We all have value and a purpose in life, irrespective of the size of our bank balance, or how much we earn, or how much we borrowed, or how much we've saved. That is fact. Get that point in your mind right. Self-worth is not the same as net worth. Just because someone's rich financially doesn't mean they're rich as a human being. The second thing to do is to focus on cultivating meaningful human relationships. Now, you're thinking, what on earth? This is a money talk, Jason. Why are you talking about cultivating human relationships? Well, it's really simple. All the research shows us that the more connected you are to other people, the more empathy you feel for other people, then the more confident and secure you're going to feel emotionally. And if you do experience financial challenges or obstacles, as we all do through life, at different stages, then you'll be more emotionally capable of handling them. It's not the fact that bad or difficult or unpleasant things happen in life of a financial nature, it's how we respond to it, how we cope with it, how we navigate through it. And we all know, with the cost of living going up and all various other negative news in the stories, and we're not poo-pooing it, the point there is that there have always been those stories. I grew up in the 70s, and that was a really grey, horrible time. There were strikes on the go, just an absolute dreadful time to be alive. But we got through it, and we will get through it. And it's easier to get through stuff in life if you feel secure and connected to other people. And the third thing that I want you to focus on is remember that you are not unique in having financial challenges, worries, or problems. Few people have money completely figured out, and everyone suffers setbacks, mistakes, and slip-ups at various times. I do, okay? I've had reasonable success in my life, but I can honestly tell you, and I'm going to share with you in a minute, that you know, I'm human. We're all of us imperfect. Now, over the last 15 years or so, it's become a lot easier to talk openly about mental health. And it's easier for people to cope with mental health issues when they hear high-profile and supposedly successful people share their own mental health struggles. And the same thing can apply to talking about money, right? Now, look, little picture of me when I was 21. I know, I haven't changed. Here's the thing. I had told hundreds of thousands of people about my own money struggles in my early 20s when I was almost bankrupt. I had negative equity on my house. I owed about £30,000 of non-mortgage debt. I felt a total financial failure. And I was embarrassed at my financial situation. And what made it worse at the time was that most of my problems were self-inflicted because of deeply held insecurities and anxiety. I spent money that I didn't have to buy things I didn't need, to impress people I didn't know, and who, quite frankly, didn't care about me. And the reality is that many other people, there are events happening to them or things outside of their control. And I get that. But the point here is that how we cope with these things is all down to what's going on in our own mind. Doesn't get rid of the problem, but how we react to them is in our control. Now, What I want to talk about here now is it's a good idea to find ways to have non-confrontational conversations about money with people that you care about or know well. And that's important because one, obviously they're people you may share your finances with or your life with, or they're people who you can trust and they're not going to exploit your vulnerabilities and you feel like you can be open with them. And the more that you can talk about money and the role it has in your life, then the more you'll reduce its power over your life. And let me say that again, the more that you can talk about money in a positive way and the role it has in your life, the more you will reduce money's power over your life, because your problems are not financial, okay? I know you might think that if you're in a really difficult situation, and I know some people are, but the reality is there's always a solution to every problem. And if you think of it like that, then that's half the battle to dealing with it. Now, here's some ideas for starting a positive conversation about money. If you have a partner or you've got parents or grandparents, this is a good conversation starter, right? And you want to ask them this question: what did you learn about money when you were growing up, right? Now, what's so good about that question is it's completely open-ended, and that allows your partner or your relative to share their beliefs, their values, and emotions learned from their childhood so that you better understand how they relate to money. Then, once they have shared that with you, you can share with them what you've learned about money growing up. So remember, first listen, right? And then speak. And the reason why it's really important to hear about what they learned about money is because that will give you an idea of why they do the things they do or why they believe what they do. And this is really important. We had a question this morning's session where a couple were not on the same page. And and how can they get on the same page with one wants to spend and one wants to save? And this is a great opening question to do and ask when you're not tired or you've not had a drink or you're not under pressure. Ask this question when you're relaxed, and you will start to really understand your partner in a way that you haven't understood before. When people are impulsive spenders, that's possibly because they're desperately seeking connection and feeling insecure. If people are hoarders and savers, it's because, again, they want to feel a sense of control and they want to feel that they're on the front foot. So that may well all come from their upbringing. Now, another great question to ask is this one. If money was a person and you invited them to your home for dinner or tea, who would they be? Because what this does, this tells you a lot about someone's money beliefs, and it's a non-threatening way to get them to express their beliefs and their feelings. And it can also be quite funny because as long as you don't judge the response, it's very amusing. So in my case, when I did this with my wife, I said that money for me as a person would represent the life and soul of the party, a bit of a sort of the drunk that won't go home, that thinks they're good at dancing when they've had a few drinks. And because that is what money really kind of personifies, certainly in my mind. And so it's good to a degree, but then it can overstay its welcome. And my wife, her view was that money as a person was a man, an older man in a pinstripe suit with half speckled glasses and looking very, very, how can we put it, rather cold and calculating, because that's her perception of the role of money. So here's the thing, my wife and I obviously have to learn, like we all do in relationships, we have to learn to understand where we're coming from, but more importantly, we've got to get on the page and be going in the same direction. We don't have to agree on everything, but what we have to do is find things that we can agree on as a couple, or we can agree on as a family. And that is the power of communication. And a great book to get, if you really want to go into this more, learning about non-violent communication and listening and so on, is called Crucial Conversations. Look it up on Amazon, you can get it on Audible. It's a brilliant, brilliant book called Crucial Conversations. It will transform how you think about communicating. And if you've got children, try to find an age-appropriate way to have both positive conversations about money, but also demonstrate through example. What you want to do is, as I say, look for opportunities to teach children and young people what you've learned about money. And in my case, I've been very open with my two daughters who are 18 and 23. I've been very open with them about the mistakes I made as a young adult, including the destructive impact of uncontrolled spending on credit cards and overdrafts. And so, for instance, my two daughters do not have overdrafts. They do not have credit cards. My eldest daughter came out of uni and didn't have an overdraft. You might say, well, that's okay. No, she still got the student financing and everything. But the point here is she learned to spend within a budget because she knew an overdraft and a credit card were not an option, okay? Because I've taught my children that those things can get you into problem. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone who has those situations from the past, but I'm just saying teaching children through examples and they look at what you're doing as well as what you're saying, that's the key. But again, look for opportunities to have positive conversations. When you hear things on the news, when you hear things, you read things, just use it as a little conversation starter and just have an open-ended conversation. Now, this final thing could be the most positive and most powerful thing you could do. What you might want to do is comparing yourself to other people is a loser's charter. Okay, it's just not a good thing to do, because there'll always be someone who's got more than you, more successful than you, getting ahead than you, more friends than you. And some of these people on social media, I mean, some of it's true, right? They are living that life, but most of them aren't. So the reality is that peer comparison, comparing yourself to others, you're always going to be at a disadvantage. But if you find a positive money mentor or role model, that can really help you make progress and build your confidence. So let me explain this in a bit more detail. This could be a person that you know, or there might be someone you've read about, or you've watched online or on TV. And what you want to do with a role model or a mentor is look for someone who's a few steps ahead of you financially and who you can relate to and respect. So you don't want to compare yourself to others in the sense of, oh, do I measure up or am I good enough? That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is say to yourself is, could I get to where they are eventually? So give you an example, when I used to do triathlons, the run was always the bit I enjoyed doing. That's the last bit, you know, you do a swim, cycle, and then a run. And you are quite tired, but I used to sort of look, not who are the leaders of the whole race, but I'd say, who are 200 or 300 meters ahead of me? Can I get to them? And then when I got to them, I'd say, oh, who's 200 or 300 meters ahead? Can I get to them? So again, I was looking to some people who were slightly ahead of me and pulling myself towards them. You can do the same financially. Now, in my case, I've had several financial role models. My older brother, Sean, who is incredibly good with money. I don't agree with him on everything, and I wouldn't do everything he suggests. But he is someone who's incredibly positive, lives a fantastic life, and he's very, very abundance orientated. It was someone that I emulate. My late Uncle Dave was a wonderfully resourceful man. He showed me about not wasting things, but also he taught me about taking responsibility when he had a business that went wrong, and he ended up spending 15 years paying all the debts back because all the other directors had scarpered. But he taught me about you take responsibility. And then my late uncle, granddad Kenny, who again was a very hard worker, very disciplined, very non-judgmental, and he taught me that it is just money. It's just a tool. It's a bit like currency. And then the final one in my role models is Warren Buffett. Now, it's not because he makes my list, not because he's, I know, the third richest man in the world, and he's a multi-billionaire, probably coming up to a trillionaire. But the reason why he's one of my role models is because he's maintained a relatively modest lifestyle, despite being one of the world's richest people, and he still works. And I love I like his values, I like his principles, he enjoys what he does, and he says people are the most important thing in his life, and doing work that he enjoys and finds meaningful. So he's someone where I don't want to, for instance, my role model is not someone who's driving around in Bentleys and partying in Ibiza. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But Buffett is one of my role models for those reasons, that he still lives in the same house 50, 60 years down the line. He still goes to work every day. You know, he still enjoys life. And the money is merely kind of, you know, the money he's giving away to people. So I like that. Now, you find your mentor, someone who you can emulate, who's got values that you like and attributes that you like, and you've got a good choice, good chance of getting ahead. So let's have another poll question. I want you to think, could you think of at least one financial role model that could help you make progress with your money? Yes, I can think of several. Yes, I can think of a few. Yes, I can think of at least one person, or no, I'm struggling to think of anyone. So if we can launch that poll, please, Renee.
Yeah, just launch that then. Great.
So could you think of one financial role model that could help you make progress with your money? Yes, I can think of several. Yes, I can think of a few. You launched the poll yet, Renee?
Yeah, launched. Okay, and we've got, yeah, okay, so majority saying yes, I can think of a few, Jason.
Share that. If you can just share that, please.
Yep. Just shared there. So majority saying yes, I can think of a few. 20% saying yes, I can think of at least one person, which is good. And then about 10% saying yes, I can think of several, and only 5% saying they're struggling. So that's good news, Jason.
That was slightly better than the earlier one, wasn't it?
Morning,
We had,
yeah.
I think we had 10% were struggling to think of someone.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good, improving.
So if you can't think of anyone, look, think about, was there someone at school? Is there an older relative that you've forgotten about? Was there an uncle or an aunt? Is there someone in your area? Is there someone who you bought a house from who you got to know? I don't know. Is there a business person that you work for? Was there a previous employer or a previous manager? It doesn't have to be the immediate sort of thing. Think back to people that you might have admired that you've forgotten about. So thank you for that. Okay, right, now let's move on to Q&A, money-related questions. No silly questions, as many as you got, and we've got 10 minutes here before we've got a final poll before you go. So we'll have you finished at 1:30. So what have we got on the doors there, Renee? What have we got? Give me some tough questions.
Yes, Jason. So we've got a tough one to start off with, which I think is very topical at the moment, is how does anyone cope with the 100% rise in the energy costs at the moment?
Yeah, very, very tough. I get that. Right. I look at it this way. Say you had to take a pay cut of let's say that the average fuel bill is going up £80. Let's say, I don't know, everyone's different, but let's say going up £80 a month. Look at it another way. If you had to take a pay cut for some reason, what would you do? Because an increase in expenditure is the same as a pay cut, right? So I'm not saying there's any easy to this, but it's all about psychological priming. So that's one way to think of it. But the second thing is that there's very, very few situations in my whole career, and I've been around in financial services for 32 years. I've failed to meet someone when I've sat down with them and actually looked at what they're spending their money on. Rarely have I found that there isn't waste to cut, that there isn't a leak to plug. Do you need 3 streaming services at 10 quid a month? That's 20 quid a month. Do you really need to have the latest iPhone on a contract that you were thinking about doing, which is 38 quid a month, when actually you can buy a second-hand one for 150 quid and a £6 a month SIM card? Have you got the best home insurance? Are you on the right broadband package? Is your mortgage too expensive? There are deals now on mortgages that are probably cheaper than when you bought your house. What about going to your landlord and asking for a rent reduction? I know he or she could say no, but why not ask? I rent out quite a lot of properties, and if someone came to me and was in a really difficult situation, I would certainly consider it if they were a good tenant or overall, and I would have to weigh up giving them a £20 a month reduction in rent for a period of time versus having to replace them, pay for new references, getting new people in. I'm just saying. So, and then the other thing is to think, well, this won't be forever. It may be that you have to tap into some of your savings to plug that gap until you can get your wages to increase, or you can find other ways of saving. Or you might have to do some work in your part-time or sell off some stuff that you're not using. There's no magic to this. I'm not saying this is easy, but I always believe that a good crisis or a good obstacle in life is here to teach you something. And the more you can become conscious about the money you are spending and identify ways of optimizing the spend. I mean, are you spending sensibly in your food budget? The food budget is one of the biggest things we have. Are you buying branded goods, or could you buy own brand goods? Are you buying well-known makes of headache tablet when you can buy generic ones? There's always ways that you can substitute. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's fun, but we have to do what we have to do. So I think what I'm saying is use this example of the increases that are going to happen in April. Start working now to find the opportunities. You either have to reduce costs, you either have to increase income, or do a mixture of the two. So start now and start getting in using the smart spending system, which you can find from the Learn website or the Salary Finance or Neighbour portal that your employer makes available, and start educating yourself about how you control spending and how you do smart spending, right? Because if it's not this, it'll be something else.
Sounds good, Jason. So we've got someone that's written in as saying that I'm pretty good with money, but my partner can't even use the word money. How do we break down the barriers? So Jason, what's one of your sort of like top tips for kind of having that money conversation with a partner?
Well, again, if you go back to what I said, the conversation starter, tell me, what was it like growing up with money in your house? I'm interested to know what it was like growing up. If you do that, what you often find is if someone's not prepared to even say the word money, it's because it represents pain. There is something deep-seated psychological where money has a representation for that person, which will set off alarm bells. It will make them want to go under the covers. It will make them want to, do everything other than dealing with money. But we know that that's not going to help them. So what we have to do is we have to meet them where they are. you can't judge your partner based on your upbringing and your values and your genetics. You have to understand where they're coming from. And if you can understand why they are what they are, and it may be that your partner agrees that you will take the lead, but what they can't do is abdicate responsibility. Okay, so if you can have gentle conversations about, tell me about what it was like growing up with money, tell me some of your money stories, you know, what was it your mum and dad taught you? You'll start to understand where it is. And in a more positive way is to map out what would be a perfect life. Say we won £1 million on the premium bonds. What would we change about our life? Now, when you do that, it really helps people and free yourself up from the current situation. I love the £1 million question, because I say, if you won £1 million on premium bonds, and I like that more than the lottery because it's, you get your money back, what would we change about our life? Now that is great fun, because what you're doing is you're having fun. And when I was growing up, I used to have a catalogue. My mum had a catalogue, and I used to sit in bed and make out I was buying a house and equipping it and furnishing it. I know it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it, 8 years of age? But because our house was so cheap and horrible and poor and small, I had this dream that I was going to live in luxury. So I would be pre-telling myself what it's going to be like when I'm rich. Now, I know it sounds weird, but if you can start getting yourself out of your current situation and say, what if we had no constraints? What would we do differently? And then say what's really important to us, then as a couple, you can start to craft a kind of an image of what life might be like, even if the current situation is a bit difficult, because it will give you the motivation you need to start addressing things together. Remember, you're in this together. You know, you're in a relationship, you should be all in.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, but it was easy.
It's not easy, but there's some good tips to get the conversation started, Jason. So thank you. We've got a few questions coming in about some of the resources on Learn. So that's basically where you go for the information on the smart spending system that Jason mentioned. There's calculators on there as well. So make sure you head to learn.salaryfinance.com/UK to get those different calculators and stuff. Jason, another question that's come in is kind of just to sort of talk about, this is a question about lending money and loans more generally, but how would you go about sort of like prioritizing, how do you prioritize what you borrow money for?
Well, first and foremost, you borrow money, if non-mortgage money, you borrow to clear up historic debt. So for instance, salary finance, one of its biggest uses is to clear up historic non-mortgage debt, which is expensive or the payments are too high. And so what we suggest to people is, look, if you can pay less interest and possibly extend it out a little bit longer to make it more palatable, it can take the stress off of you. That's the most important thing we have to do. We've found people who've got 4 or 5 different sort of loans all over the place, costing a fortune. They don't really think that they're costing a lot, but when you add up 24, 25% interest and all these different payments, you're feeling out of control and it's sucking the life out of you. So the first thing that we would recommend is that replacing historic debt, which is either draining too much of your monthly budget, and particularly as we move from April onwards, and or it's been charging you too much for the privilege. And the reason why salary finance loans are so much cheaper is because they are deducted directly from your salary and you can never miss a payment. And the second thing is that the payments, because they can't be missed, are improving your credit score all the time. So if you're out of control, that's the first thing. The second thing is you might need to borrow money that's not a mortgage. If, for instance, you have an unavoidable expenditure, and you do not have any or enough savings, okay? So if you need a car to get to work and a car is going to cost you £2,500 and you have only £1,000 of emergency saving, you can't use your £1,000 emergency saving because you need to have at least 1,000, we teach in the Money Milestones, which is all on the Salary Finance website. We teach you to have at least 1,000 just to give you a bit of breathing air, even if it's not an optimum amount for emergency fund. But if you've got an unavoidable expense, which is an absolute essential necessity, you've got to have a car to get to work, for instance, then that would be okay to borrow, but borrow smart, borrow in the most efficient way, which is why salary linked loans make sense. But do not use, and this is the issue, do not use non-mortgage borrowing to buy things that you are telling yourself a story that you think you deserve or you should have. So not for holidays, okay? Not for that expensive £6,000 car when you can only afford 3,000. Not for having that tattoo done. Not for buying a sofa to put in your thing because you feel like you're worth it and you haven't gone anywhere and you haven't had a holiday for 2 years. If you can't afford it, then we would not recommend you borrow for consumables that go down in value. Only use borrowing, non-mortgage borrowing, for its unavoidable expenses which are necessary for you to get to work or to function, or to clear up historic situations you've got. And there are scenarios where they're essentials. And the point I'm making is be very clear whether it is an essential and it's something you have to do versus something that you want to do. Because if we keep on borrowing money to buy things that go down in value that we don't really need, it's going to be harder for us to get ahead, and more importantly, harder to build resilience. Right, I think I'm sorry about that. We've run out of time, as we always do.
Okay.
Very happy to we'll answer any more questions that have gone into the question box in a written format, and they'll be posted to Learn. Do go to Learn. There's a load of videos from me there where I explain stuff. But I want to finish with our final poll. I want to know what you're going to do, what action you're going to take after today's webinar. Are you going to visit the Salary Finance Learn website and just view the videos, guides and tools and have a look around the site? Are you going to use the conversation starters to talk about money, particularly if you're trying to get on the same page with your partner? Are you going to think of a financial role model that's a few steps ahead of you and perhaps think about what is it they do that I don't do? See if Salary Finance can lower the cost of any existing non-mortgage debt. It takes minutes to find out. Or are you going to open a salary-linked savings account with your employer? So vote away.
Perfect. Just launched the poll there, Jason. And just while people are voting on this poll, I wanted to mention that there was a question about the recording. So we will share a copy of the recording with your employer. So yeah, we'll get those out to you, to them sort of by the end of this week, and you'll be able to sort of listen if you've just kind of joined today's session.
And we're doing this session again tomorrow at 12 o'clock. So if anyone you know you think would value from it, they can come and they can register for that, and we're very happy to have them on live.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to close the poll there, Jason, and it seems like majority of the people, so 69%, are going to visit the Salary Finance Learn Hub, which is really great to see. And then 8% think about a financial role model, look at the SF for non-mortgage debt and open a savings account, and then 6% think about those money conversations. So that's great, Jason. Good to see that people are going to visit the Learn Hub.
That's brilliant. And here's the thing, taking action is the main thing. Small actions, don't overwhelm yourself, just go small. So I just want to say one other thing is, if you want to be featured in a future financial wellbeing webinar with me, where we will actually use you as a case study, and we'll look at what your issue is, and we'll look at what's different routes to. What we're looking to do is put some case studies together. We can do it either as anonymous, or we can do it with you as an individual. We only share what we need to, but we want to try and help the community learn from other people. So if you want to have a one-to-one with me, where we can take you through different situations and share it with the community, please get in touch on the Salary Finance website, or email us question@salaryfinance.com. Until we see you again, thank you for attending. On behalf of Renee and I, great to hang out with you. I'll see you at April's webinar. Thank you, everyone.